My name's Pam, and I'm a naturalist at Long Lake Conservation Center. And today we're going to explore a little bit of Long Lake Conservation Center and do some Minnesota tree ID. This is a skill that will help you when you head out in the woods so that you know a little bit more about what you're seeing. Before we head out, I want to let you know that there are two different classifications of trees, coniferous and deciduous. Coniferous trees have needles and cones, and these are the evergreen trees, meaning that they keep their leaves and needles throughout the year, with an exception of the tamarack tree, and we'll look for that later. A deciduous tree is a tree that does not have cones, and these trees have leaves that turn colors and they drop in the fall. We're going to start off with the coniferous trees. Here we have a white pine. As you can see, white pine trees are tall trees reaching a max height of 133 feet in Minnesota. One way to recognize white pines is by its bark. This tends to be smooth with a greenish color when it's young, and as it matures or gets older, the bark becomes darker with furrows in it. Another way to identify this tree is by its needles, and this tree has needle bundles of 5. And by bundles of 5, I mean the part that comes off of the branch right there. This is called a bundle. These needles grow from 2.5 to 5 inches in length, and white pines can be found anywhere from dry rocky ridges to sphagnum bogs. But it tends to prefer cool, humid areas with well-drained soils. Our next tree that we're going to identify is the red pine. The red pine is Minnesota's state tree, and it can be found in many areas of the state. If we take a close look at the bark, we can see that it's a reddish-brown color, and it looks kind of scaly. This coloring and texture would be your first clue that you're looking at a red pine. This pine tree has needles that grow to between 4 inches and 6 inches long, and it grows in bundles of 2. My trick to remembering this is that red is a very short word, and this tree produces needle bunches with very few needles. Red pines grow on dry soils. Red pine is rarely found in swamps, but it is common along swamp borders. Does anyone know what this tree is? This is a black spruce tree. You might notice that we are in a different location or ecosystem. This type of tree tends to grow in peat soil. Common areas include bogs and swamps. That would be your first clue that this tree is a black spruce, and that it is growing in a bog or very wet environment. The bark of a black spruce tends to be grayish to reddish brown and scaly. This tree has needles that grow in a spiral pattern on the branches, and they only grow to about 1/2 inch in length. These needles are bluish green in color, and they stay on the branches year-round. Black spruce has a slow growth rate with height increases of less than 12 inches a year. The fact that the bog itself is low in nutrients and very acidic adds to that fact. Another coniferous tree that grows in a bog or swamp is the tamarack tree. Now, the tamarack tree is a very unique tree because even though it has needles and cones, in the fall, the needles turn a golden color, and the tree then drops the needles and it grows new ones each spring. Now, if you're looking at this tree and it's not fall, there are a few different ways that you could identify it. And one way would be by taking a closer look at the bark. Tamaracks have a rough reddish-brown bark that tends to look scaly. Another identifier would be the needles. These needles grow in tufts of 15 to 30 needles, growing to only about 1 inch in length. Because these needles are grown new each spring, they tend to be a brighter green color, and they are soft to the touch. In fall, they become sharp when golden, and then they drop. A bog is low in nutrients and is acidic, which is one of the reasons that the growth rate of the tamarack is slow. Now we're going to move into deciduous trees, but before we jump right into identifying them, there are some terms that you're going to need to know to help you with identification. There are 3 different types of information that you need to know. These are the different types of leaf branching, the different kinds of leaves, and how and where it attaches to the stem, and how to describe the leaf edges.
First, we're going to learn the different types of leaf branching. Here we have opposite leaves. This is where 2 leaves are attached at a node, and the leaves are always opposite each other on the stem. And on the right side, we have alternate leaves. This is where only 1 leaf is attached at a node, so the leaves alternate sides along the stem. The next thing you would need to know is the kind of leaf. Here we have examples of a simple leaf. This is where there's only 1 leaf that attaches to the stem, and a compound leaf. A compound leaf is a leaf that is divided into several different leaflets. The last thing we need to know about is leaf edges. Here we have an example of a smooth-edged leaf and a toothed-edged leaf. Here is a doubly toothed leaf and a lobed leaf. Now that we have a better understanding of this terminology, we can start identifying deciduous trees.
Here we have a northern red oak. And now a northern red oak is a pretty common forest tree. It can reach a height of 110 feet in Minnesota, and it's a fairly fast-growing tree. This tree has a thick gray to gray-brown bark that tends to be broken up by smooth ridges with furrows on the sides. This red oak leaf is, as we learned, simple, meaning it's on its stem by itself, alternating leaves that grow, like here's the leaf, and then another leaf would be alternate. They're not across from each other. And the tree also produces acorns that are 3/4 inches to 2 inches with a blunt top. Our next deciduous tree is the bur oak. This type of tree is the most common oak tree in Minnesota. And one way to identify this tree is by looking at the bark. It has thick, gray, and deep furrows. The leaves are one of the main ways that you can identify this tree, as it has a very distinctive look. These leaves are characterized by the deep sinuses in the lower half of the leaf. A sinus is the space or indentation between the 2 lobes. These leaves are simple, alternate leaves with rounded lobes of different depths, and the underside of the leaf is densely hairy and velvety to the touch. Here we are at a quaking aspen, which is said to be the most widespread tree in North America. This tree is identifiable by a few different characteristics. First, we're going to start looking more closely at the bark. If you notice here, the bark starts a pale grayish green, and as it grows, it turns to a whitish green. Another characteristic of the bark on this tree is that it is smoother the further up the tree that you look, but as you get closer to the ground, it becomes thicker with a gray or brown coloring, and it has shallow furrows at the base of the tree. These trees have leaves that are simple, alternate, and they're shaped as a broadly oval with a pointed tip, and they have finely toothed margins. These leaves quake or tremble in the wind, and that's why it's called the quaking aspen. An interesting fact about these trees is that they have an ability to spread and grow by sprouting stems from a shallow root system, and this process is called suckering. This means that a single tree can produce hundreds of trees spread out over an acre or more. Our last tree that we are going to look at probably looks pretty similar to the quaking aspen we just saw. That is because this tree is closely related to it. This tree we are looking at is called a big-tooth aspen. This tree gets its name from the leaves. They are simple, alternate on the stem, and are on the average 2 to 4 inches long, and they have larger teeth, as you can see here. Here's the big-tooth aspen. Here's the quaking aspen. The bark on this tree starts out smooth and greenish yellow to olive green in color, but as the tree grows, the bark becomes gray with large ridges and furrows. The big-tooth aspen's leaves, as I said, are larger and have different teeth than the quaking aspen, but another difference is that the leaves appear later in the spring and they're densely white woolly when just growing. This tree also reproduces by the suckering process, so a majority of big-tooth aspen trees in one forest are actually clones of one main tree and not originating as seedlings. Well, now that you know some of the basics of tree identification, you will be more prepared to go out and do some tree identification of your own, and maybe you'll be able to find the 8 different trees that we discovered today. Fall is a great time of year to be out viewing trees and the beauty of nature, so have fun exploring.